Today, I want to talk about leading when you don't have all the answers or the advantage of vulnerability. If you're in academic medicine, you are trained to know things. Let's be honest, you don't even need to be in academic medicine. We're just trained to know things. Diagnoses, you have deadlines, you have confidence, and it comes from expertise. It's warranted. So when you ask questions in a meeting and you do not know the answer, or when you're tasked to do something and you don't really have a clear roadmap, your first instinct is not one of comfort or confidence. You might feel like you want to panic. But leadership is not about having all the answers. It is about navigating uncertainty and helping others to live in that discomfort, which we are not trained to do. That ability does not come naturally to most of us. And quite honestly, we're not even trained for it. It's not a fixed trait, however, it's a muscle, and you can train for it. So that's what I want to talk about today. And my story oftentimes is all over the place, but I want to talk today about when I started as an administrative leader for the utilization management group. I was building a group in utilization management at a children's hospital I worked with at the time, and there was no blueprint. We'd never had a group like this. And to be completely honest, when they told me about the opportunity, I had to Google utilization management. I didn't recognize that this was the group that did all the prior authorizations for all of the procedures and other things that I took care of as an ENT surgeon. So there was no blueprint. I didn't know what the best practice was. There was no step by step guide, and there was no other expert within my institution. I did feel the weight of being that person in charge and feeling like I should be clear and decisive, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what the right structure was supposed to look like. And so instead of pretending, I started asking a lot of questions. And I said, here's what I know. Here's what I need to figure out. I had a great thought partner in this at the time. And we just started working through it together. And we looked for a who, not a how, meaning we looked for somebody who had more expertise than we did instead of how we would make it happen. And it was uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you, I wasn't as good at sitting in the discomfort at the time, but something surprising really happened. People stepped up, whether it was within the organization who worked in the utilization review committee. Those are the people on the other side who submitted things to utilization management. It was hiring people who were experts and who came in and helped us build this ship. And within months, that group was hired and was engaged and was one of the most engaged proactive teams that I have ever worked with. And one of the things it also taught me is it didn't erode my authority. It actually built trust and credibility because nobody knew how to build this kind of system. Even people who'd worked in that system hadn't done the building before. So what I recommend is if you're sitting in one of these moments where you have a lot of discomfort and you're trying to do something new, admit what you don't know and follow it up with what you do know or what you believe in. Follow it up with the vision because the vision drives that team forward. So help people show where you're going. This is what we want to build. This is what we know now. This is the gap. I may not know the final model, but I'm confident that we can get there and that we have the right building blocks, or we need to work on finding those building blocks and those people who are going to help us get where we need to go. The other thing about this process, it requires you to be constantly pivoting. And so conversation about that at the beginning can be really useful because change is uncomfortable for most people. And so acknowledging that we're, as I used to say, building the ship as we're driving it. People talk about building the plane as they're flying it. I think that's actually probably a better analogy, but same idea that we recognize that where we are now is not where we're going to be in 6 months. And you have to look for teams who are comfortable with that. Now, in academic medicine, vulnerability can feel dangerous. We are surrounded by experts, whether it's in the system that we work in or the disease process that they're looking at. And so our culture really prizes that level of authority and precision. But real leadership is not about protecting your ego. It's about creating an environment where people are safe to speak up and to innovate and to embrace change. It's about being able to fail and about being able to fail quickly. And it's about knowing when you're wrong and doing something different. And I've used this phrase, being able to fail, to a couple of different departments, and people do not like it. They do not embrace it. And so I realized I probably need a different vernacular for that. But it's about recognizing that you're trying something, and that's better than just waiting for the right solution. And also seeing that it may be right or wrong. And so when you figure out that it's not working right, pivoting quickly. And that probably sounds better than being okay with failing because we're not good at failing. We don't like that feeling. It's not something we're even taught is acceptable. And so that's what I mean when I say that we fail quickly is that we find a solution, we try a solution, and then we quickly figure out if it's working or not and pivot to something else if it's not. But some of that vulnerability is being able to say, I don't know, or this isn't right. It's my idea isn't working. And it also shows some psychological safety. It lets the people around you admit if they don't know something or they need to learn something or what they're working on is not working the way that they hoped it would. So I want you to try and reframe vulnerability as strength training. So think of an uncertainty moment as a repetition, like you would in a workout, and then ask for feedback on a presentation or say, I'm still learning in a meeting, or share a time when you struggled and you moved forward. If you just take one of those moments and you put it out there for others, it helps them understand that they can also express when they have doubt or uncertainty or they need some help, but they need to feel comfortable asking for that help. So in academic medicine, this may look like, hey, we're redesigning the clinic schedule. We're trying to improve efficiency or access or whatever's important at the time. And I don't really know the exact perfect answer, but this is a couple models we're looking at, or this is something we want to try. And let's learn from the experience, both from the patients and for the team. Or in research, it might say our results did not support our hypothesis. It was incorrect. That is valuable information, and we're going to refine our question and build a stronger study. Or we're going to see if there were some problems in the way we executed our study, and our hypothesis might be right. But that expectation that everything's going to be right is, I think, cleanest in the research world, where we recognize sometimes our hypotheses are not. Now, in the education world, you might say our resident feedback suggests our curriculum's not working as well as it will, or we are set up so that we don't have distinct services. We're trying to give everybody the opportunity to be flexible, but it turns out they don't get to really work hard in one area or really refine something in regular, closely intervaled repetitions, and that may not be working as well as we thought it would. But in each of those, you want to show transparency, resilience, and to model this ability to be vulnerable and live in the discomfort. Now, my tip here is to name the unknowns and plan to explore them. So this might be using a 3-step structure. First is acknowledge the gap. We don't know about the best way to do that clinic flow change. And then frame the opportunity. Hey, if we get this all together, we're going to be able to figure out a better way for all of our clinics to flow. We're going to gather some data before we make a final decision. And the third is to engage the team. Who wants to help design the pilot? Who has ideas on how we could do this? And then oftentimes you'll find if you give people the opening that they actually have great ideas. And that uncertainty doesn't actually paralyze everybody, but gives an opportunity to explore some creativity. And there's going to be people on your team who excel in this area if they're given the opportunity to feel safe, throwing out some ideas that may or may not be the things you go with, or may or may not work. Now, like I said at the beginning, I think this is like building a muscle. You have to get used to that discomfort. I like to say you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But at first, you're probably going to over-explain, over-control, over-prepare, because that's what makes us feel comfortable. I used to do crazy data research analyses every time I did something I didn't understand. And I learned a lot, but I probably spent way too much time doing a lot of work on things that weren't going to work. So if you start practicing this uncertainty, of course, start with the data, be comfortable, have some good theories to start with. There's a reason for that hypothesis, but you don't have to overdo it, and recognize that you can get some stability in this uncertainty. So stay steady, stay curious, and be collaborative even when you don't know the path. And my next tip is to try and pause, breathe, and reframe. And this is to fill some of that silence. So all of us have that moment, that pause. You put something out there, crickets, and you want to fill the space. But in these kinds of moments, what I recommend is not to fill the silence, but pause, resist that instinct to answer right away. Take a breath. This will actually help get rid of the physical tension. Literally do a breathe in and out. A bigger one than maybe you normally do. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as that or out loud or with your hands like I just did if you are watching this. And then reframe. Shift the I should know this to I am leading this through some discovery. I'm allowing us to sit in this comfort. It's going to let people expand their minds. And then you'll start to associate uncertainty with growth, not necessarily with that fear or that panic moment. So I just want to sum up today by saying that real leadership isn't about knowing everything, but it's about creating clarity when you don't have certainty. It's allowing people to be comfortable in that discomfort. It's allowing people to try things that they may not have been comfortable trying had you not given them some psychological safety. And so I want you to lead with honesty and curiosity. I want you to try things that may not work. I want you to look at hypotheses that may be wrong and then refine, make them better, make them right. But let the people around you also express uncertainty, let you know when they don't know what they're doing, help them come up with solutions, and let them know it's okay for them not to be perfect when you start. And that's not failure. Although, again, I don't think failure is the worst, but it's your leadership muscle growing stronger. So say, I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to talking to you next time. And please follow me on all of the media in which you are watching or hearing or looking at this. Thanks.